First of all, I want to apologize for the bad lightning. I was supposed to film this where I still had some lightning outside, but stuff happened. I've re-recorded this like 3 times because I'm stupid. So I just have the lights in my room and this candle and a dream and a pile of books and my phone on that pile of books on top of my bed and a dream. That's all I have. You're gonna have to work with that. But basically, today I'm going to talk about why I stopped reading in my native language. Not totally. I still read a few books in my language from time to time. I bought one very recently, but I stopped buying books translated into Portuguese, basically. I mostly only read books that are in English, and unless they're written in originally Portuguese, then I will read them in English. And here is why, basically. Now, to demonstrate why that happens, I have 3 books in here. The Vegetarian by Han Kang and Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman. These are to prove one point, and then there's Ensaio sobre a Cegueira by José Saramago, aka Blindness, to prove a different point from the one I will make with these 2, basically. So these 3 will serve of examples for the point I'm about to make. Hi, it's me again, and I just want to clarify that you will realize that I did not, in fact, speak about Heartstopper in the video. The reason why I didn't, it's because I talked about it for 10 minutes, and in those 10 minutes, only 2 of them were really valuable, and I cut it all off because it sucked. So sorry about that. But yeah, it was basically me just saying that the translation for Heartstopper was very goofy, because it is. It's not bad, it's just goofy. That's just what I wanted to say. Bye. So I'm going to start with Blindness, because the first reason, it's the price. If you are not from Portugal, you probably don't know this, but this is Ensaio sobre a Cegueira by José Saramago. I bought this for 18 euros, I think. I think it was 17, but it was originally 19. I just bought it on a discount. So, 17 euros. 17, that's a lot. That's a lot of money. Okay, I'm not sure if it's a lot of money for you people, for you bougie people in Germany, you bougie people in North Europe, but for the average Portuguese person, okay, who earns significantly less than you people in Central Europe, our minimum wage is like 800 something. It's less than 1,000. Portugal is the only country in Western Europe to have a minimum wage of less than 1,000. 20 euros, 17 euros for a book in Portugal is expensive, okay? That's a lot of money. And it's not that books aren't worth that money, it's just that the average Portuguese person can't buy them, if that makes sense. So that's a lot of money. You wanna know how much money this shit is in English, translated? There's this one website that's it sells books in Portugal. Book is an online book selling website, and then there's Bertrand, which is the oldest bookshop in Portugal, the oldest brand. They also have an online website. The translated into English version of this is 12 euros. 12. 1912. 1712, whatever. Normally when people criticize publishing houses for this, so for books being expensive, they go, it's not expensive, we're just paying the translators right. This is not translated, this is originally in Portuguese. Why is the translated version less expensive? It makes no sense. And I understand why, because it's a whole publisher Portuguese, so I was it's different in the UK and it's different in Portugal. I know that, but it's just stupid. This is just for me to prove a point that I would rather pay 12 euros than like 22. This is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. My aunt bought this for me in the UK for £10, £10.99, I'm pretty sure. However, this in Portugal, if you buy this online or in Fnac or whatever, it's €12. The translated version is 22. Like, I'm not saying it's not worth that, because it's a big book. It's a big book that took time to translate, to edit, and all of that stuff. But the average Portuguese person can't afford that. 22 euros is enough for me to eat at school for a month. Or more. Because I don't eat at the canteen, I'm talking about the bar. So, like, it's enough for me to do that. Most people are not insane like me and will not use the money that their parents give them for lunch to books. Most people don't do that. I do because I'm stupid, but most people don't do that. Most people use their lunch money to lunch. Okay, so the average Portuguese person doesn't have that much money to afford, which is why there was a while ago, there was an article about how the Portuguese people were reading more in English than ever, and how that was TikTok's fault. It's not TikTok's fault. There's genuinely no way you can blame the Portuguese people reading more in English on TikTok. Excuse the quality, this is the computer's camera. Oh wait, fuck, wait a sec. So excuse the bad quality, this is the computer's camera. I just want to say that I do understand why publishing houses are worried and how this is bad for the national market, and how, Portuguese people, they want Portuguese people to support the national market, but blaming it on TikTok comes off as really bad, because it's not that people want to read in English, it's that it's easier, it's less expensive, it's cheaper, and sometimes it's better to spend €12 on the book that is in English and it's in the original language or has a good translation, than spending more money in the book that you don't know if the translation will be good or not, which is something I will touch on further into the video. People read more in English because they spend less money, and if you are fluent in English, if you speak English well, and you can't understand a book in English just fine, okay, you can have to look up small words every now and then, but that even helps you with your English vocabulary. So there's just a bunch of benefits to it. Like, you spend less money, your English gets better, you gain more vocabulary, and blah blah blah. There's a bunch of benefits to that. So I understand why people do that. I do it myself. Like, it's sometimes, yes, I will buy a book in English and I won't be able to read it. I bought a book of like a collection of short stories by Edgar Allan Poe, and I was supposed to read one short story per day in October. I couldn't do that. Because, hear me out, it's not that the vocabulary is hard, it's just that it's older English, older American English that I have some trouble to understand. And so I could fully understand like the short stories and the atmosphere and everything that happens, I decided into reading them in Portuguese instead. I will still keep my English copy to one day when my English is that good I could read it, but I will mostly read it in English, in Portuguese, because it's just easier for me. So, in these types of situations, I will read in Portuguese. If the book is originally in Portuguese, if I don't think I can read it in English, I will read it in Portuguese. But besides that, I would generally rather read in English because less money, more vocabulary, better English, like blah, blah, blah. This does have consequences, which I will talk about at the end of the video. But now let's go to my second point. The reason why so many people are starting to read books in English in Portugal is because translations are not that good. They're not. This is The Vegetarian by Han Kang, won the Nobel Prize for Literature this year, 2024. And it's a good book. Again, it won the literal Nobel Prize for Literature. Okay, it's a great book. It explores like misogyny and the place of women in Korea really well. Okay, it's generally a good book. I loved reading it. The metaphors are great. The first part of the book was my favorite, but the rest of it is also great. You want to know what's not great? This translation. This is in Portuguese, of Stadiana Hankang, and this is by a publishing house called Leia, which if you are Portuguese or if you've been to the Portugal's book fair, you know they're not a small editor, no small publishing house. Okay, you go to Lisbon's book fair and there's like 6 easels, I'm pretty sure, but there's like 2 sides, so there's like 3 easels. There's 3 like lines of like little book selling editors on one side, and then there's other like 3 rows. I'm gonna say rows. Other 3 rows in the other side, but they're like divided by a little, like, because it's in a park, by a little thing. In that side, in the side of like the right side, if you are looking to above, half of it is for Penguin and the other half is Leia. I'm not making this up, okay? Half of it is Penguin, the other half is Leia. It's insane, okay? So this is like the Simon and Cluster of Portugal. Okay, Penguin is insane everywhere. It's very international. Leia is more national, so it's of course not as big as Penguin, but it's still pretty big. Okay, it's still a really big publishing house. As a big publishing house, it's not like you don't have money to get a translator. You do. Okay, you have money to get a translator, and I do believe you can't tell me that there are no translators who translate from Korean to Portuguese in Portugal. There have to be. There's no way they don't exist. And this book, it's translated from English. The book was translated from Korean into English, and then this book is translated from English, the English translation, to Portuguese, European Portuguese. I'm not making it up. Okay? It says here, translated from English by translator. Nothing against the translator, by the way. She has no fault in this. They gave her something to do and she did it. Okay? No, I don't blame her for any of this. But it's just sad. It's just sad. And not just that, I have already read another book of this publishing house by the same like collection, which is like beige here, like this thing here as well. It's Frankenstein, which is actually in the pile of books that's holding my phone. In that pile of books, there's Frankenstein by this same collection. The translation also sucked ass. If you don't know, Frankenstein has 2 versions. An earlier version from 1818, so 1818 years. And the other one is from 1836. I kid you not. That specific translation does not tell me which version I'm reading. I think it's the 1818 version, but I'm not sure because it doesn't tell me. There is another translation by Penguin Classics Portugal that does tell you, like, if you go, there's like translator's note. The version in this book is the version of 1836. You are reading the 1836 version. There is a note saying that. In this one, there isn't. I have no idea. I have a guess. I don't know for a fact which one I read, which is sad. Like, and again, the translation was just bad. Like, it was generally bad. Like, it was. I would read quotes by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in English on Goodreads, and I was like, there's no way this is the same book I'm reading, because her writing is really good. Like, I love her writing. And then I go and read the book and it sucks. Whoever translated this didn't do a great job at encapsulating her writing. Like, it's generally not good. And with this book, it was the same thing. It wasn't even just that. Like, the translation was not that bad, I think. I haven't read another version. But there is a literal mistake. And it's not even like one thing is if you miss a comma. You miss a comma, you miss like a period. I don't care, okay? That happens. So I'll put a photo here of the mistake and I will help you with this. So in Portuguese, everything is gendered, okay? It's not like English, everything is gendered. And pronouns are gendered as well. And the word for sister is irmã. the word for brother is irmão. So there is one letter difference, but it sounds like irmã, irmão, irmã, irmão. It's a completely different sound because of the like and the However, in the book it says a sua irmão. So they use feminine pronouns and then the word brother. There is no brother in the book. There's a sister in the book. That's all there is. There's a sister in the book. There's no brother at all. They genuinely made a mistake. They probably typed in brother instead of sister. Happens to the best of us. How did the editor not catch it? How did no one catch that? Because it's not a small mistake. Again, it's like I said, it's not a missing comma, a missing period. It's not a small grammar mistake that anyone could have seen. It's just, I noticed it. And hear me out, I'm horrible at noticing mistakes in books. Horrible. So for me to notice it, I was genuinely confused because I was reading and I'm like, this sentence sounds wrong, but maybe I missed something. So I was like, where is there a brother? Where is the brother? Like, where is it? Is there a brother? Like, I was so confused. And then I was like, oh wait, this is a genuine mistake. Like, someone fucked up. And again, this is not a small, if you listen, voices to my mom and sister, it's not a small publishing house. It's one of the biggest publishing houses. And like, as I was saying, again, it's just, it's a dumb mistake. Like, it's a dumb mistake that anyone who read this twice would have noticed. Like, it's a dumb thing that's easily noticeable. I noticed it and I'm stupid. Like, it's stupid. So this is the bad translations, the bad quality of translations. They try to publish as much books possible with the least effort possible and having to waste the less money possible. If you don't have, paying a Korean translator, like someone who translates from Korean to Portuguese, probably you have to pay more, probably because there's not that many in comparison to people who translate from English to Portuguese. So it's probably cheaper to find someone to translate it from English. It's also probably really cheap to not get an editor, because I can't believe an editor looked through this and didn't see this, like, genuinely. It's just cheaper to produce a low quality translation than it is to produce an actual good quality one. And yes, this book is not that expensive. This was like, I think this is like 10 euros. This is the cheap Portuguese books. This collection has really cheap books. But again, you don't have to have a horrible quality of a translation just to make the book cheap. Like, yes, of course, if you are not selling it for that much, I don't expect it to be the best translation ever. Although Penguin Classics are not that expensive and their translations are good. All of this to say, you don't need to produce the worst quality translations ever just because you feel like it, just to spend less money. Like, again, you can't do that, but it's kind of bad. If you were a small publisher, I would get it, but you're not. You're a liar. I would understand if you were a small publisher. You are not. You aren't. You just aren't. So, do something, please. This is just bad. It's just horrible, okay? All of this to say, books in Portugal are expensive, and sometimes the translations suck ass. And by the way, I don't really expect Portuguese translations to be that good, because if you're not Portuguese, you don't know this, but in Portugal, there's an entire history of media not being translated, okay? Back when my grandma was, when TV was first like introduced to the average household, the novellas, the little series that would pass on TV, most of them were not in European Portuguese. They were either in Brazilian Portuguese, Spanish, English, maybe any other language, really. It was mostly Brazilian Portuguese and Spanish. So European Portuguese, because Portugal didn't make those novellas. I think I remember. I'm not sure if I actually remember this or if I was just led into believing I remember this, but I know this happened. So if it didn't happen to me, who is 17, It happened to people who are like 20 years old. Cartoon Network, you know Cartoon Network, the TV channel Cartoon Network, anime and just, kids TV shows would pass in Spanish with Portuguese subtitles because there was no Portuguese dub. Most things don't have a Portuguese dub. Portuguese dub is not really a thing. If you are in Portugal, you pick up your little TV controller and you just go do zapping. Is it called? I think it's zapping that's called. You do zapping and you end up on like a movies channel. It will always be in the original language with subtitles. Never in Portuguese. Which is why you see so many younger people kind of like speaking and mixing up Portuguese and English. I do that because, first of all, I can speak both languages fine. So that happens when you're bilingual. Sometimes you just forget a word in Portuguese and then you have to say it in English, and vice versa. But I do use English slang with my friends who also speak English on a daily basis. So the fact there's this little media in European Portuguese helps a lot, even with YouTube. Okay, parents were complaining about their kids speaking in Brazilian Portuguese because they were watching too much Brazilian YouTube. First of all, that's your fault. That's your fault. If your kid is watching that much YouTube, that they're getting more vocabulary from YouTube than from you, that's a you problem. That's you fucked up. But tell me, which influencer, which Portuguese YouTuber are they going to listen to? It's just no. Back in when I was a kid, they were still Citripio and stuff like that. Now she's gone. I think she was the only one who made content for kids. In Spain, this doesn't happen. In Spain, German, Brazilian Portuguese, there is most of the times a dub for movies and for TV shows and stuff like that. Again, in Portugal, a few years ago, kids' cartoons were in Spanish. The lack of media in dub and translations in European Portuguese is a problem, because then they'll complain about, oh, people don't read in Portuguese, oh, people only watch stuff in English. What are we going to watch and read in European Portuguese with a good dub and with a good translation? You have to invest in this stuff. You have to have good translations. You have to have good dubs. And when that happens, then you can complain. Then I will allow the whatever fucking publishing industry to complain about that. But until then, don't open your mouth to go, oh my god, it's TikTok's fault. People are reading in English. Shut the fuck up. It's not TikTok's fault. You're just stupid. And your translations suck. And your books are expensive. And it's cheaper to buy it in English. And now I'm gonna say, this does have consequences, because I find it easier now to write in English than in Portuguese. Not because I lack vocabulary, not because I lack the ability to write. It's just that when it comes to writing, I like to write short stories with prompts. I look up for prompts on Google, and then to get better at writing, I will write them in either English or Portuguese. When it comes to Portuguese, I find it much harder. I'm only used by now to writing papers for school in English. So when it comes, you give me write a creative thing in Portuguese, I can do it. I'm just not confident enough in it, because I'm is this bad? Is this good? That might be a self-worth issue, but I just find it harder. And I also think it's because I'm less familiar with reading books and short stories in Portuguese by now, to the point where when I read them, I'm this is not good enough, this is not that great, so whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna say goodbye. And I want to apologize for the bad lighting and for the bad camera quality. So yeah, goodbye. Hope you enjoyed this.